Okay, everyone, we're just going to go ahead and get started. Good morning. I'm City Councilor Lydia Edwards, Chair of the Committee on Government Ops. It is Thursday, April 8th, 2021. We're here today for a virtual hearing on Docket 0400, Petition for a Special Law Regarding Uniform Procurement Act. This matter was sponsored by Councilor Anissa Sabi-George and was referred to the committee on March 3rd, 2021. In accordance with Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 executive order, we're having this hearing on Zoom. This allowed, he modified the open meeting laws to allow for public bodies to hold public hearings to balance the needs of the safety of the public with the ability to do our jobs. The public may watch this hearing via live stream at www.boston.gov/city-council-tv. And also on Xfinity 8, RCN 82, and Verizon 964. It will also be rebroadcasted at a later date. Written comments may be sent to the committee email at ccc.go@boston.gov and will be made part of the record and available to all councilors. If you would like to offer public testimony and comments and have not signed up to do so, please email Christine.O'Donnell, ODONNELL, @boston.gov for the link. This home rule petition would require bidders to disclose to the city before the award of a contract a list of subcontractors who will be employed on the project. Goals of the subcontractor participation will be 25% of city spending for businesses owned by people of color and women, 15% for women-owned business enterprises, and specifically 10% for minority-owned business enterprises. The home rule petition will also give the city the authority to negotiate with women or minority-owned business entities or other business entities that have met the requirements for subcontractor participation if the proposals of these enterprises are within 5% of the lowest bid. Participating today, or joining me today, are my colleagues, Councilor Sabi-George, the lead sponsor, Councilor, in order of arrival, Liz Braden, Councilor Ed Flynn, Councilor Kenzie Bach, and participating on the administration's behalf are Selena Barros-Miller, Director of Equity and Conclusion of the Office of Economic Development, Emma Handy, CFO of the City of Boston, Midori Morikawa, Chief of Economic Development of the City of Boston. And I think we have David Green also participating on behalf of the administration. We have some advocates, including Erin Fowler, legal fellow for the Lawyers for Civil Rights, Sigun Ido, President and CEO of BECMA. If I've missed anybody who is on here, please raise your yellow hand and I'll be sure to announce. I see Drew Smith from the Treasury is also here. My apologies, Drew. And I think that's it. Again, we will likely go through the panel. Oh, did I miss somebody?
Yes, sorry, Councilor Edwards. I just wanted to let you know I'm here as well. Councilor Julia Mejia.
Thank you. So what we'll likely do, Councilor Sabi-George, is I'll turn it over to you if you'd like, and then we can have the administration and the advocates go through the home rule petition, and then we can go back for rounds of questionings with the councilors. Councilor Sabi-George.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I filed this home rule petition in response to the city's disparity study, which showed us what we already knew. Our city's WBEs and MBEs face major systemic barriers, including when bidding on public contracts. This home rule petition is not the only thing we need to fix, but it is a start and would give us more latitude to negotiate procurement contracts and subcontractors in the long term. We know we need to move towards a more equitable procurement system. Sorry, that word always gets me. I don't know if it's the Boston accent. In order to do so, we must change the rules and practices that actively make it difficult for the city to contract with MBEs and WBEs. I believe this home rule petition will be one of the necessary and important steps we need to take. I know that some of the other issues that we need to fix will come up today, including the certification process, the actual bid system, and building in a more accountability to meet our goals across the city. This home rule petition can't solve all of these pieces, but raising those issues will help us think through our next steps. I'm eager to hear from the administration and our community partners on the text of the petition and all of the related matters. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Liz Braden.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to thank Councillor Sabi George for bringing this home rule position forward. I feel this is really critical as we work to try and address inequity and the wealth gap in our city. And I look forward to the conversation. I'm here to listen and learn this morning. So thank you.
Councillor Ed Flynn. I'm sorry. Councillor Ed Flynn?
Yeah, Councillor Asabi George, Councillor Edwards, I apologize for that. I was off screen. Just want to say thank you to Councillor Asabi George, Councillor Edwards for their leadership on this in this working session, this important issue, ensuring that our minority-owned businesses and women-owned businesses are supported by our city and have the opportunity to secure city contracts is critical in terms of racial and economic equity. I support the effort to make our city's procurement process more equitable and give our minority and women-owned businesses a better shot at doing business for our city. I don't support this 100%. I support it 200%. And just as a way of background, of the 5 people on my staff, 4 of them are women of color. So I intentionally wanted to make sure my office is diverse, and recruitment is a critical part of that, making sure that you spend enough time. I don't mean to lecture anybody, but spending enough time in looking for and doing the right outreach to candidates is a critical part of that. But just thought those comments might be helpful. Thank you, Councillor Sabi George, and thank you, Councillor Edwards.
Thank you. Councillor Kenzie Bach.
Thank you so much, Councillor Edwards. I also just want to thank Councillor Sabi George specifically for bringing this forward. Before I became a councillor, I worked at the Boston Housing Authority and became deeply familiar with the constraints of state procurement law and federal as well. And there's just no question that the state procurement law ties our hands on a host of fronts. And I think that figuring out how to change it is a critical piece of more diverse procurement for the city of Boston, while also safeguarding, good stewarding of public funds, making sure that, we're in as much of a position as possible to support good worker standards, stand against wage theft, all kinds of things, right? There's a whole set of things that the good procurement policies are going to protect from. And I don't think there's a way for the city to do all that we need to in terms of using our city money to affect a more economically equitable city without this piece of the puzzle, without the state procurement change. So I'm really grateful to Councillor Sabi George for bringing it forward. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Mejia, then Councillor Michael Flaherty.
Thank you to the chair and to the sponsors for calling this hearing. As the chair of the Committee of Small Business, the inequity of our city contracting system continues to be a major issue that we've been fighting to address. Community-based organizations like BECMA have made it clear what we need to do in order to address this inequity. They have been advocating for 15% of contracts to go towards minority business enterprises and a combined 40% for minority and women business enterprises. I think that we also have an opportunity in this conversation to reevaluate where our contracts are awarded, but how they're put in for bidding. The supplier portal is an incredibly complex system, and we all know that. Some of our office have tried to register a business there and couldn't even get past the first page. We also have an incredibly large contracts going for things like school lunches, which could be broken up in order to work with small local businesses to provide local, culturally competent foods. I think that this special law is great. It's a great first step to work towards all of these goals. I look forward to this hearing and a productive conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Flaherty.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and also to the sponsor, Councilor Sabi George, for filing. This is a hugely important issue. As a city, we have enormous buying power, particularly as a capital city of the state, and we need to be deliberate and intentional with that spending to make sure that it's done fairly and efficiently. In addition to hearing testimony, I'm also interested in learning more about the technical assistance that we are providing and should continue to provide businesses. I often hear one of the main challenges in bidding for a city contract is the lack of the back of the house capacity to do the oftentimes quite arduous and bidding process, but also the tedious paperwork. So I think we need to be working to eliminate those barriers as well for companies, as well as the profit margins. I also heard loud and clear from some of our previous hearings on this topic is that the margins just weren't good enough for folks to have to want to go through the entire process. And again, because they don't have sort of that back of the house support, oftentimes it doesn't make it worth their while to do so. So I think that we also need to look at that a little bit. I know that, so we have the lowest bid portion of this, but maybe that doesn't always need to be the case. Maybe we need to be recognizing that in order for people to be able to compete for the business and or want the opportunity to compete for the business, we also have to make it attractive for them to want to do that. And if they're not set up that way, the upfront cost that it takes to get them set up that way, it's just not going to work. And we're going to continue to see the results that we're seeing now. So look forward to the hearing and listen to folks that know it well. And any way that I can help as a citywide councilor, happy to do that too, both the lead sponsor and the groups, the advocacy groups.
Thank you very much. I'm going to now turn it over to the administration. I think they have a PowerPoint and a deck to present, and I'll just turn it over collectively to the administration. I'm not sure how you are scheduled your order. I know some people are here just for backup. Some people are going to be testifying. After the administration, we're going to go to the advocates, and then we'll go through a round for the city councilors. So to the administration.
Great. Thank you, Chairwoman Edwards. So I will go ahead and start giving kind of a sort of context, and I'll turn it over to Selena, Emma Handy as well. So good morning. Good morning, Chairwoman Edwards, Councilor Asabi George, Councilor Bach, Councilor Breeden, Councilor Flaherty, Councilor Flynn, Councilor Mejia. Thank you for allowing us to testify on behalf of the administration on this home rule petition for Uniform Procurement Act. Just wanted to let you know that we do have a hard stop at 11 o'clock, but we are happy to answer and follow up, do any follow-up after that as well. So again, my name is Midori Morikawa. I am the Chief of Economic Development for the City of Boston. I have with me today Selena Barrios-Milner, the Chief of Equity for the city as of yesterday, and Emma Handy, CFO for the city, who will all be speaking on the city's equitable procurement efforts to date and some of the next steps and announcement that Mayor Janey made yesterday. So we look forward to sharing the details of that in a bit. So as you may remember, in February, the city released the result of its first disparity study, which was done in 18 years. So just to provide a bit more context on why did we have to do a disparity study and what is the purpose of the disparity study. So in 1989, the Supreme Court ruled that giving procurement preference to minority-owned businesses was unconstitutional, unless that preference is narrowly tailored to address specific documented discriminations. So in order to comply with this ruling, cities, states, and other public agencies around the nation needed sufficient data to legally justify a procurement program that creates a goal, preference, or set aside based on race or gender. So a disparity study is the most important and widely used tool that cities use to stand up supplier diversity programs. Put simply, a disparity study evaluates whether a particular jurisdiction has a documentable pattern of underutilizing minority and women contractors. If a disparity study shows that there is a substantial disparity between the availability and utilization of certain groups, that can provide legal justification to create a goals program based on the specific disparity shown in the study. So based on the results of the disparity study released in February, the administration is now in the process of building a program that is narrowly tailored to withstand any legal challenges. So the current effort builds on a lot of work we have already started. So I'm just going to now turn it over to Selena Barrios-Milner to talk about the city's supply diversity efforts to date. Selena?
Great. Thank you so much, Chief Morikawa, and thank you to all the counselors here today, lead sponsor, Asabi George, and Chair Chairwoman Edwards. Thank you for creating the space to talk about really vital work for the city. Following the completion of the disparity study in February, the administration moved immediately to enact an executive order that, one, accepts the results of the disparity study, because some cities do the disparity studies and then they put them away on a shelf and no one ever knows about it. But one, we acknowledge and accept the findings of the study, and then move to immediately enact some of the recommendations, including establishing an overall annual spending goal for the city. Based on the availability found in the disparity study, the recommended goal was a goal of 17%, 11% with women-owned businesses, and 6% with minority-owned businesses. However, the city took a bolder approach, understanding that in some cases, availability, the methodology used to count someone as available is that they perform the type of work that the city buys. They're interested in city contracting. They've previously bid on city contracts. So it was a very conservative definition of who's available. And we understand that a lot of our specifically minority-owned businesses and women-owned businesses face barriers so they wouldn't show up as available, although they're right beneath the cusp. So for example, there might be minority-owned businesses that haven't already bid on a city contract, so they wouldn't have been counted as available for city contracts. So we took, with a lot of analysis, we took a bolder measure, understanding that there are people out there that could be competing that we're not seeing and that aren't yet in the pool. So we adopted the goal there of 25 discretionary spend, and we think that it's one that we need to work hard to achieve, but that it more accurately represents who's out there. We also set the timeline that within 6 months we would set up the process for establishing race and gender conscious goals on individual contracts, which is how you get to that 25%. And so you don't set a 25% goal on every contract. You look at industry availability for each contract, and in some cases it might be a higher goal, in some cases it might be a lower goal, and that's really important because that's exactly what Chief Morikawa pointed out is considered narrowly tailored. Anytime you do blanket anything that benefits people of color or women, then it starts to raise flags, which is a bigger problem, but that's beyond the city's control at this point. So this is how you set up a narrowly tailored program. We believe within 6 months, we can take all the steps to do this responsibly. So it's not just slapping goals on a contract, but it's also giving departments language and training to evaluate different proposals. And a lot of what prime contractors will be submitting are what are called good faith efforts. So really defining what those efforts are and really giving departments the tools to evaluate those and be able to compare different proposals specifically on their diversity and inclusion plans. And also just educating the business community, right? The vendors who could be prime subs, the people who maybe haven't bid on city contracts. So that's what we estimate as the time to fully roll out the race and gender conscious specific goals on these contracts. And by September, we'll have our supplier diversity program fully built out to monitor, track, and report on all of these results and work individually with departments on their contracts, looking forward, looking ahead, but also their currently active contracts. The last piece is that we're going to require goal tracking and reporting as part of the annual budget process. And so we count on your partnership to really be the accountability arm. And when people are requesting funds for the following year, making sure that they met their department level goals for diverse contracting. And so I think that that's a really important piece, is to look ahead and look back as well. Next slide. So other efforts that we've been working on, we set up a COVID relief fund specifically for certified businesses. We were able to get almost $2 million to 135 certified minority women-owned businesses. 48% to Black-owned businesses, and 55% to women-owned businesses. We've been really stayed on top of our outreach regardless of COVID. So we've moved a lot of our sessions online, but we're still doing information sessions as contracts come up. We are doing opportunity fairs. We have one coming up on April 28th that we hope that we'll be sending you the flyer shortly to help support the outreach for that. The goal of the opportunity fairs, we do them twice a year, and it's a 6-month look ahead of upcoming contracts. And so departments are talking to vendors specifically about active opportunities and what they know they have coming up in the next 6 months or next fiscal year. And we also have now developed a model where we let vendors know which departments are going to buy what, so they can target their networking and really go to the departments that are looking specifically for their type of service. And we do the contracting clinics, which is more of before contracts are live. It's not contract specific. It's really getting vendors ready to compete for contracts in their industry type. And so they know what are the relevant procurement laws, where can they find opportunities, what departments buy their types of services. So it's really sort of a boot camp for people getting familiar with city contracting. Now for the disparity study, just want to highlight, Chief Morikawa already spoke to the purpose of the study. Just want to highlight that beyond the data analysis of how much we've spent and what businesses are out there that we could have been contracting with, there's a really important qualitative component in hearing directly from women and minority-owned businesses in Boston and in the region about barriers that they face both in contracting with the city of Boston, but also in operating their business in the area. So we looked at both marketplace barriers as well as specific challenges with city contracting. And that's really helping to shape a lot of what our supplier diversity program will be providing. Now I'll hand it off to Chief Handy to talk a little about the work we've been doing on equitable procurement to date.
Good morning, Madam Chairwoman and members of the City Council. Thanks for having us here today. I'll just talk briefly about the work that we did in 2019 to establish what we are calling a marketing program for minority-owned and women-owned businesses. This is really important because it is a huge step forward in terms of baking the essential day-to-day processes of changing the way that we do procurement in the city of Boston into each and every contract decision that our departments are making. So what we did is required that certified vendors be included in every initial procurement by asking departments to check the list of certified vendors as they initiate procurements. Over 600 procurements have completed that new process since October. And over half of those procurements were able to find a certified business to solicit to. Now, this is really focused on the top end of the funnel, right? Who we are sort of asking to bid on our business. It doesn't change anything about sort of the legal framework that we have to make decisions through, which is in part subject of our conversation today through 30B. But it is really important because it is asking departments to sort of take a fresh look at who might be out there in the environment that could be able to bid on their business and ask them to sort of come into the city of Boston to think about doing projects with us. Another element of that work is that we have work is underway to put forth our first public equitable procurement plan. As part of the FY22 budget process, we solicited planning documents from every department, and we are now taking that information and summarizing it as we finalize the FY22 budget so that can be shared publicly with residents, with businesses, with the public, so that they can understand what is on the agenda for the city of Boston to purchase in the coming year. And that is something that we've heard an incredible demand for because it will help businesses understand what types of things the city buys and help them think about their sort of business planning and get ahead of those things. So this will be our first one. We're very excited to publish our first one, and we will continue to make it more mature, refine it, make it more robust over the years as we grow that program and project. We know that these changes to how we do business require that our City of Boston employees understand them and understand the importance of doing them. And so as part of this, OED and A&F, in partnership with the Inspector General's office at the state, stood up a robust training for city department purchasers so that they could understand both the basics of state procurement law, but also how this equitable procurement work fits within the framework of 30B and other elements of state procurement law, so that they felt comfortable with how to do this work within the work that they do on a day-to-day basis. We've trained over 300 purchasers across the city in this work. And so I think, the data coming from October of 2020, as well as the training that we've enabled our employees to have, we'll start to see a shift and a sea change in terms of how the city is approaching these things. All of this information has been summarized on a very nice webpage called boston.gov/bids. And this has been a great work between OED, Do It, the purchasing department, to basically make public and accessible all of our information about both what is currently available to be bid on, but also what is the outcome of past bids, so that businesses who are interested in City of Boston work can understand what makes a successful bid, who has won, and brings more transparency and information sharing to that process. I think that's it. Back to Selena, right?
Yes, thank you so much. So just to wrap up, because we do want to make sure we have plenty of time for your questions. We have launched a new, following the disparity study, one of the key areas that were highlighted was the need for capacity building and supporting a lot of what you have mentioned in your opening remarks. So the first step towards that is a contracting opportunity fund, which is to help businesses that are aligned with the types of work that the city procures build their capacity to be able to compete for city contracts, or to be able to bid on larger contracts than they've held. So, for example, if someone needs an extra vehicle or any other type of investment to really be competitive, we hope to support them through this fund. That's opening. It was announced yesterday, but it'll be opening April 15th, and folks will have 1 month to apply. We're focusing this on businesses that are eligible for certification, because that way we can help grow our pool of vendors that are ready to do business with the city. And so businesses that are not already certified can apply for certification, and we'll support them in that process so that we can continue to grow our vendor pool. We also announced the new supplier diversity team. And so we now have we've hired a data analyst, a program monitor we already have one program monitor, so now we'll have two. Then that position works directly with departments on their upcoming procurements and helps them strategize on outreach and award of the contracts. And then we have a new director of strategic procurement position, which is an A&F. And so this is really important because then we're starting to build our citywide capacity to both promote and enforce these policies that will help diversify our contracting opportunities. One piece that is not on here are a couple of upcoming positions that are not yet posted, and just want to call your attention to a supplier diversity business manager, which speaks to what a lot of you brought up, and I know Councillor Flaherty brought up in terms of needing assistance through the process. That's a full-time staff person that will be dedicated to helping businesses both in capacity building, technical assistance, and just navigating the procurement process. And so we're really excited to move that position along and to add that to the tools that we'll be using to diversify our spend. And that's it for our presentation. Thank you so much for the time.
Thank you. We've also been joined by Councillor Wu and Councillor Arroyo. I'm going to now, because the administration said they're going to actually leave earlier, they're leaving at 11. What I think makes more sense then is to allow for councillors and even advocates to go through a series of questions to make sure that we could at least engage with the administration right now before you have to leave. So in order of arrival, we'll start with the lead sponsor, and then we'll go the list of the counselors, and then we'll go right to the advocates for the advocates to ask the administration any questions as well. Again, this is because the administration has to leave at 11 o'clock. So I'll start with the lead sponsor, Councillor Sabi George.
Thank you.
Just to make sure, because now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, almost 9 of us. We're going to try and limit the questions to 3 minutes, at least in this round, to the administration.
Perfect. Thanks, Madam Chair. How do we, and thank you for the presentation, chiefs, and congratulations on your new roles. I am curious about how we're right now connecting with potential businesses to do business with the city of Boston during COVID.
Yeah, so we send out a monthly newsletter. Businesses can look anytime at either the bids page or the city record to see open opportunities, but we do a monthly newsletter just to refresh people's memories that they should be looking at these resources. We highlight upcoming opportunities. And then we also hold weekly certification office hours, and they really span beyond certification, but it's a space for minority and women-owned businesses to come talk to us about any of their questions. And we have weekly small business office hours as well in the small business call. So those are sort of ongoing weekly resources, monthly resources. And then we have information sessions as contract opportunities come up that line up with our vendor pool. And so we'll partner with a department just so that people can, we can really highlight a specific opportunity.
Just very quickly, Madam Chair, how do we, though, cultivate and curate a robust list of businesses? So as opposed to just sort of waiting for them to come to us, how are we proactively engaging with businesses, especially MBEs and WBEs?
Absolutely. So we have our certified business directory, which is a great place for folks to go. And now through this equitable procurement process, what it really did is all those procurements that are not publicly advertised, so between 10 and 50, actually anything under 50, that is usually, we just need 3 quotes. So for every one of those procurements, you now have to find a certified vendor to invite. And so we're building that into our process. So for even if it's like a $500 opportunity, people have to really look for businesses out there that could meet that demand. And that's building it into the procurement process overall.
Madam Chair, I think that's my time.
Yes, thank you. Councillor Braden.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just, so in terms of the certified business directory, is it open just to businesses that are based in Boston, or just go further out than that? I know, with the gentrification of our neighborhoods, a lot of our small businesses are being displaced, and they're ending up relocating to Waltham and Watertown and Framingham and further out. So, so they were Boston-based businesses, or the families who started them started off in Boston, but they've had to leave. So just in terms of the catchment area, I think, just your thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, you don't have to be a Boston-based business. There is a certification that's particular to Boston-based businesses, which is called a small and local business certification. And then you are able to search, by neighborhood or city if you specifically want to target Boston-based, but there's no requirement that you're based in Boston to be certified in any of our other categories.
That's good. And in terms of just developing the pipeline, you're really ramping up your practice, your process here. How many new businesses have you certified? Have you drawn into this process recently? I know you're right out of the box. It's only a few months.
Oh, I wish I had the exact numbers, but to give you an example, so on a month-to-month basis, we usually have 1 to 8 applicants for certification. And after we launched our Certified Business Relief Fund, we got 75 applications. in the first month and above 100 in the second month. So that's more than we would see in 1 year, So I think that putting this out there, showing people there is a benefit to being certified, that it's not just like you're going to go sit in this directory and just great, now you're in a directory, but now that there's, networking opportunities, funding opportunities, contracting opportunities, I think has really helped drive that interest.
So, and in terms of the technical support, you're finding that the technical support is actually empowering these businesses to become certified and move get into the chain, so to speak?
I definitely think that the capacity building support and the financial support is really attractive to businesses. We're still rolling out our technical assistance on procurement, and so we'll see. I don't want to speak before we see the results of that work, but I know that that's the intention, is that people that might not have been able to submit a proposal in the past will now have the support to do that.
Very good. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Flynn?
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Thank you, Selena, for your presentation as well. Selena, I'm just curious. I didn't hear any mention of veteran-owned companies. What is the city doing on veteran-owned companies in terms of including them in this process? And what is the progress of helping veterans get some of these contracts? Is it? Just want to get your thoughts on that. It's been a subject that's obviously important to me and important to a lot of residents as well.
Absolutely. So all the programs that I mentioned, both funds, so the COVID Relief Fund and the Capacity Building Fund, will be open to any certified business. So that includes the veteran-owned businesses in our directory. And then also with our equitable procurement process, they're one of the categories that we just specify that it has to be at least one certified vendor. So someone might be able to find a veteran-owned business or a small business. We don't have any goals associated with currently with veteran-owned businesses. They weren't part. The disparity study was really focused on minority and women-owned businesses, but they are definitely there, and look forward to any thoughts you all have on that.
Right. I understand they weren't part of the disparity study, but I also know that their percentage of receiving city contracts was not good. Is that accurate?
Yeah, so what happens, the veteran certification is actually done by the VA. And then the part that we do is if someone that's certified by the VA says, hey, I want a City of Boston certification as a small business, so I want to join your directory. So it's a tiny pool of folks who have done that. So we actually don't know. There could very well be businesses that we're contracting with. I know there were a few with some of the COVID response, some that were large veteran-owned businesses. So I would not, I think it's very possible that we're undercounting, just like we're undercounting everyone. But I think in particular, veterans are going to be undercounted because there's very few people who know to kind of seek that additional local certification if they already have their VA certification. So that's something that we could look into, for example, referencing our spend with the VA certified versus just like the City of Boston certified might be a way to see if those numbers are actually larger, but you're right, they're quite low.
Is this an issue the City of Boston is willing to work with me on to outreach to veteran-owned companies?
Absolutely.
And can we work on a plan to do that?
Are you good, Councillor Flynn?
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine. Thank you, Councillor Woods.
Thank you. Councillor Bach?
Thank you, Councillor Edwards, and thanks so much to the team for these presentations. I think it's I think it's been so frustrating to everybody, just like, not having the disparity study and kind of wanting to implement a bunch of these things. And yet I know, again, from just the prior experience I had, how critical that piece is to us knowing that we're going to be able to defend these new things in court. So I'm really grateful, at least, that we're here. I wonder if you could speak a little bit too on I think, first of all, that just, setting up our automatic systems such that we're inviting diverse suppliers in will make a difference. And that there's a bunch of the things you guys are doing, the clinics and stuff, that will definitely make a difference. I was wondering on the capacity building side, sort of how we're going to target folks for that. And specifically whether, to what extent the disparity study is guiding that. I know the disparity study helped identify a bunch of places where there were more minority and women-owned business firms proportionately than we were contracting with. And so kind of how's that being driven? And then also I just find myself thinking about, every time we have these hearings about the Massachusetts State School Building Authority funds, it comes up, for instance, that the project of fitting our schools for windows is this very bespoke thing, and it takes usually 2 summers, and it's it seems like a pipeline of work that we would benefit from supporting an ecosystem of suppliers who, frankly, were local and efficient at it. And we kind of have an indefinite pipeline of windows to be replaced. So I wonder what we're doing, not just in terms of capacity building with kind of the existing field, but thinking about, are there places that we could entice, diverse companies to maybe expand their business into that match with some of the city's developing needs? So I don't know if you could speak to that a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So to your first question, the disparity study has really opened our eyes to businesses that are out there that are diverse, that do perform the work that the city buys, because I think that's always, the availability is always the missing piece, right? And so you might talk to a city buyer who says, I've never found your directory doesn't have someone in this line of work, but now the disparity study has identified, and we actually have names and some leads on some of those companies. So that's why with this capacity building fund, we're really focusing the lines of work the city does. We don't want to make it overly complicated, but we want people to understand what the city buys so that they know that they should be bidding on it, because for some industries, some industries are built entirely around city contracting, but there's a lot of others that they may not know that there's opportunities for them because they're like, oh, I'm not in construction, but we do a lot more than just construction. So I think that's part of the capacity building fund. And then to what Chief Handy mentioned in terms of putting together a buying plan for the city and really identifying what we're going to buy, we actually held community briefings for the disparity study, and in every one, most of the questions were, what does the city buy? Do you buy this? And there were a lot of daycare providers that were like, do I have an opportunity? And we're like, not directly, but we have resources for you. So I think that education, it's not really intuitive what we buy. So I think that's really huge. And I love your idea about the school building authority and looking at ways to diversify the suppliers. I know that neighborhood development does an excellent job they have a lot of as needed contracts. So to repair, there might be plumbing, there might be electricians. And I know that they do incredible work with their outreach to make sure that diverse vendors know about those opportunities. And there's a lot of opportunities that are perfect for actually a smaller vendor that a large vendor wouldn't really have be interested in. And so I think that we can definitely replicate that on as needed contracts, throughout the city and state as well.
I was instructed by Councilor Edwards to be brief, so I'll just make 2 comments instead of a further question. So one thing would just be, I really think, it's a separate conversation we're having, but a really related one about kind of a conservation core and thinking about the big picture thing for me is to that buying plan perspective, what are the whole areas where the city's going to drive a market, whether it's through our direct work or frankly with the carbon pricing things that we're going to put in through a regulatory framework. I think that the appetite for building retrofits in the city is going to shift. And I just feel like a piece of this needs to really be that. It needs to be us being like, hey, we can wait for the market to come to us in the usual non-diverse ways it does, or we can sort of get ahead and know what we're doing and create public options and create options that employ our people. And so I just sort of really want to emphasize that. And then the other thing would just be, and I know this isn't the working session, so I won't go into sort of language detail on the procurement thing proposed by Councilor Asabi George, but I know that sort of, the idea of would 5% wiggle room help us is embedded in that. And so one thing I think would be really helpful for the city to track as it invites diverse suppliers in and as it, narrowly tailors this program to direct more of our spending to diverse suppliers, is I think at some point people will ask, especially up at the state, well, how much of a premium are you willing to pay as a city for things being diverse? And I think, frankly, that at some point we have to have those numbers, because it's part of making the case for it. Since obviously 30B is designed to make sure that the city's getting the best price on everything, right? That was the sort of original conception of it. And I don't think there's a way around that framing without explicitly addressing well, no, we think because we have a dual goal about, driving a more equal economy, this is the premium we're willing to pay for that more diverse thing. And I just think we really need you guys to track that data on what bids look like coming in. So just really wanted to flag that. But that's my time. Thank you, Councilor Edwards.
Thank you. Before I go on to other councils, I wanted to make sure I read into the record a letter from Councilor Campbell. Dear Chairwoman Edwards and colleagues of the Committee on Government Operations, I regretfully cannot attend today's hearing on Docket 0400, Petition for a Special Law Regarding Uniform Procurement Act. I thank Councilor Asabi George for sponsoring this matter. It is critical that our city does everything it can to address inequities in contracting, especially after reports showed that only 1.2% of the $2.1 billion in contracts for construction and professional goods and services that the City of Boston awarded went to Black or Latino-owned vendors from 2014 to 2019. I will be ably represented by a member of my staff at today's hearing and look forward to reviewing today's hearing recording and committee report and working with the committee on any recommended next steps. Sincerely, Andrea Campbell, Boston City Council, District 4. Councilor Mejia.
Thank you. So I do appreciate Councilor Block. She took one of my questions, so I'm glad that you answered it. Thank you to the administration. Just kind of want to follow that thread a little bit in regards to within the in terms of the feedback that those who are applying for contracts. Just curious, what kind of feedback are we providing to those who don't get the contracts? Are we providing technical assistance? Is there an accountability dashboard that can help us track our efforts, and also how we're building that bench in terms of feedback so that the next go around that they can be successful? And it's my other question is, it's great to hear that we have affirmative marketing to MBEs, and that especially the requirement that certified vendors to be included in every procurement. But even with the process of certifying as a vendor is incredibly challenging, particularly for small business owners who don't speak English. And how are we making changes to our supplier portal so that it's easier to certify and apply? And then my last question, how is the administration working with the community, particularly small business owners, to determine our race and gender conscious goals on individual contracts? What would that process look like? And if we have time, I'd love to hear a little bit more about the disparity public forums. How many were held in languages other than English? What is the makeup of your advisory panel?
Absolutely. So I know that we don't have a lot of time, so I will send you the advisory council list. I'll send it to all of you. It's also on our webpage. So I'll make sure that you have that link on our boston.gov/econdev/equity. So we have the members of the advisory council on there. The building the bench, would love to work with you. I think you have some really great ideas on capturing the feedback. Who were the diverse vendors that made it into the pool, and working with departments on understanding, what they were missing or how they can compete. Right now, we have the system that Chief Handy spoke about, that you can look at past awards, but I do think a more hands-on approach is something I'd love to discuss further with you, and maybe work with our business manager to see if that can be part of a regular process. the simplifying certification. So we are working with the Health Commission as part of their anti-racism work to make our certification materials that explain the process and the benefits multilingual. And there's definitely, we need to do a lot of work overall with certification just to make it a more streamlined process. And that'll be part of our, one of the announcements yesterday was investing in vendor management and compliance tracking system. And so we are putting out an RFP to do that, to bring our certification process online and always looking to see how we can streamline it. And lastly, just in terms of the briefings, so we held 3 briefings at the 3 different times of the day, the morning, noon, and evening on different days. All of them had live interpretation in 5 languages, and they were all recorded as well for folks that couldn't attend it. We also did the outreach in those 5 languages, and all the materials regarding the disparity study have been translated and are on the disparity study website, which is just boston.gov/disparity. So all the information is there and it's multilingual. We did have people asking questions during the Q&A in Spanish, and it was nice that I could just answer them directly and not have to bring the interpreter on, but we had interpreters on hand if other languages came up. So we are looking to always make that more accessible, and would welcome on to any other ideas that you're hearing from your constituents or just anyone else.
Councilor Edwards, so I have time for one more quick question.
One more quick question, and then we need to move on.
Yeah, thank you. So Selena, thank you for all that. I am curious, earlier when COVID hit, we created a project called the Bodega Project where we were able to contract. We did some fundraising with local nonprofits, and we were able to create a culturally responsive food project where people can purchase food right in their local neighborhoods. And I'm curious, as we start thinking about the recovery efforts, what are we thinking in terms of being able to support small businesses, restaurants, convenience stores, to kind of both deal with some of the food insecurity issues as well as being able to support some of these minority businesses right in our neighborhoods to be able to help provide culturally competent foods in our neighborhoods?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Office of Small Business partnered with the Office of Food Access on, and this is my colleague Natalia Ortube, so she would have the most complete information on this, but they established the Food Access and Local Supply Initiative. And so what they did is, as part of COVID relief, and I think maybe partially inspired by the Bodega Project, because it's sort of like that at a citywide level, they are giving grants out to the businesses that have been helping to distribute food throughout the communities. And part of the grant is that they have to spend it with a local supplier, which the majority of those nonprofits were not previously using local suppliers. And so I know that bodegas are part of the list of kind of approved vendors, and they can also suggest other vendors. So I know that's, I think it's almost $1 million going to local food suppliers, but definitely my colleague Natalia would have the most information on that. Or I don't know, Chief Morikawa, if you have anything to add on that one.
Yeah, no, that's you're exactly right. So we're gonna announce this initiative probably in the next week or two. So this is still embargoed, FYI, and it's gonna be over $1.3 million in exactly right, culturally appropriate food and making sure that we can support our immigrant and communities of color through that initiative. So thank you.
Wonderful, thank you, Councilor Flaherty.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be very brief. It's good to see the chief and the director. And also very happy to hear from Selena that about the director of strategic procurement position. So just 2 quick questions. How many total positions will be added to support this type of work, particularly as it pertains to capacity building for our businesses? And I've been a longtime advocate for helping folks, as I mentioned in my opening, with helping them with the back of the house so that they can compete for these contracts. And then the second question is what I know obviously that people can learn about the Boston Contracting Opportunity Fund through the live webinars, but what other type of outreach is being done as it pertains to our Main Streets programs in our Chamber of Commerce's? And what can we as a council do to be helpful in getting that word out?
So I don't know if Chief Handy, if you want to add anything about the positions.
Sure. Yeah. I'll just speak briefly about the Director of Strategic Procurement. So Administration and Finance has hired a director who will come on and report to the CFO. He is starting next week, and he will be leading broadly all of our work around sort of modernizing, rethinking, refreshing how the city approaches procurements. The first order of business is really all of the work associated with equitable procurement, both the 2019 executive order, the disparity study implementation, the plan that Selena referenced that we're building over the next 6 months. That is more than a full-time job for one person. And so that is the focus. I think over time, this person will also work on things that we know are priorities in across the city, like green procurements, and also just the nuts and bolts of sort of how do we continue to be more efficient and improve and be more transparent. So his name is Michael Miller. He starts with us next week, and we're incredibly excited to have him. And then I think we have another 4 positions at OED that are either sort of in process or will be hired that will continue to support the work of the supplier team.
Thank you, Chief.
Councilor Fleury, was that your only question?
No, that was the first question. And the second one was just, I know that folks can join on live, can go onto the live webinar to sort of learn about the Boston Contracting Opportunity Fund. I just wanted to know what additional outreach is being done as it pertains to our Main Streets programs, our Chamber of Commerce, and how can we, as a council, be helpful in amplifying that.
Midori, do you want to add anything in terms of outreach through Main Streets and our small business outreach beyond the calls?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question again?
Yes, so folks can go onto the live webinar, or they can learn about the Boston Contracting Opportunity Fund. So the question is, what additional outreach is being done about the fund, and particularly as it pertains to our Main Streets and Chamber of Commerce? Are we in regular contact with them, letting them know about the fund, letting them know about the opportunities that exist with the city of Boston and vending opportunities in particular?
Yep. So we do have a weekly small business call where we engage over 100, sometimes 200 small businesses to let them know about the fund opportunity. As well as, we have a weekly newsletter that go out to 16,000 small businesses for all the opportunities and resources the city can offer. And we did, work with a third-party marketing firm to help us kind of outreach to wider network of the Chamber of Commerce, the Latinx Chamber of Commerce, and there's like 30 or 40 collaboratives in Boston and greater Boston area to do additional outreach on that. So we're excited that we can kind of go above and beyond in terms of outreach.
Yeah, and we would be happy to send those materials to the city council if you could help share with your networks as well. We would, in regular times, we'd love to flyer and have a street team, but we're still practicing COVID safety.
Very good. So thank you for the work you're doing, and also just to concur with Council Flynn, just to reach out to our veterans as well and make sure that they're included in any efforts and outreach. So thanks for the work you're all doing. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks to the lead sponsor.
Thank you. At this point, we're going to go over to our advocates. I believe we have Erin Fowler from the Lawyers for Civil Rights.
Madam Chair, may I just ask one follow-up question to this panel?
Sure. Just to let you know, though, to the other counselors, it's only because she's the lead sponsor.
Thank you. Well, it may actually be a question for you first. So I am curious about the language in the home rule petition and how the administration, what their initial reaction is to that, or are we planning on a working session to go through the language?
We would do a working session.
Perfect. Okay, then it can hold until then. Thank you. Thanks to the administration. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And Erin, if you will, this is questions for the administration because they're leaving in a half hour. So if you have questions or comments, none. Okay. Because I didn't want to do formal presentations quite yet. If my colleagues had any other follow-up questions in this half hour, please raise your hands. And if not, we can go just to the advocates to start their presentation. Seeing no hands, I'm going to turn it then over to Erin Fowler from Lawyers for Civil Rights. And if Councillor Wu or Arroyo or any of the councillors come back, please raise your hand and I will put you in line for questions. Go ahead, Councillor Erin, go ahead.
Thank you. And thank you all so much for having me. I do apologize in advance if there's any construction noises going on. There was just someone jackhammering down the street. Hopefully that will be okay. I do live in Beacon Hill, so maybe Councillor Bach and I can have a conversation afterwards. But thanks again for having me. My name is Erin Fowler. I'm an attorney with Lawyers for Civil Rights. I am testifying today in support of the minority contractors that we represent. LCR proudly represents BECMA, Amplify Latinx, and the Greater Boston Latino Network in a legal action challenging the City of Boston's discriminatory contracting system. In February, after the city's disparity study was released, LCR filed a complaint with the DOJ and the DOT under Title VI. Title VI prohibits discrimination in federally assisted programs on the basis of race, color, or national origin. In this complaint, we asked the DOJ and the DOT to investigate the city's public contracting system. As to the proposal here, some of our close community allies have expressed concern about this proposal, so we want to emphasize that community engagement and outreach is going to be absolutely critical for any solution that is proposed. Specifically, as to this proposal, we want to identify two important areas for your consideration. First, the proposal states that businesses should be duly certified by the Massachusetts Office of Minority and Women Business Assistants. This effectively creates a certification process. As discussed by many councilors today, this proposal does not provide resources to support MBEs through the certification process. At LCR, we have worked closely with hundreds of minority-owned and women-owned businesses that are not certified by the city or the state because it is extremely onerous and time-consuming, as people here have recognized. Many MBEs and WBEs need significant resources and technical assistance to successfully complete the relevant certification process. Without dedicated resources in place, ideally provided through a dedicated supplier diversity office with expert staff, we will continue to see low MBE and WBE participation and engagement. To fully realize the city's goals, certification assistance is critical. Second, the proposal can be significantly strengthened to make sure prime contractors do more than simply disclose to the city a list of subcontractors who will be employed through the duration of projects. Reporting demographic data is very important, but the disparity study provides the city with much more leverage to create a supplier diversity program that has actual teeth. The city can and should be more aggressive. For example, the city should be empowered to reject bids that don't advance the city's supplier diversity goals. So keeping these considerations in mind, along with our community partners, we are calling on the council to halt their efforts on this so they can take a more robust home rule petition that addresses all of the issues rather than take a piecemeal approach. And again, we want to emphasize that in our DOJ complaint, we asked for a community-centered approach, and that's what we would like to see moving forward. So I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you so much for having me again.
Thank you. And I just wanted to make sure, I think, I know I announced other advocates, but they may not be here. I don't think that they are. I think it was Sagun, but I don't think Sagun is on. So I'm happy to just go now back through a line of questions. Again, we have 20 minutes with the administration. And Erin, did you say you had a time limit or no?
I have a hard stop at 11:30. But
okay. All right, then. So to counselors, we can go back again, starting with the lead sponsor. If there's any follow-up questions in this round, Councillor Sabi George.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Erin, for being with us this morning. Do you, so in response to the presentation from the administration, I think, it's duly noted around the financial support to get to those pieces so that we are supporting local business owners and MBEs and WBEs through this process. Do you have any thoughts on how what funding that may take, and I think I just go look at my notes really quick on the position that supplier, diversity, business manager, the role that they would play. Is that enough, or are you advocating for more? Or different, I guess, maybe not more. We're always advocating for more.
Yeah, I think that would be a good start to start the conversation. Again, I think it'll be important to loop in our community partners and have everyone at the table to be able to answer that question. I mean, we represent MBEs, but we want their voices to be at the table to be able to speak to that specific question.
I mean, I think maybe with the administration, we see that role, that person playing that role.
Yeah, sorry, I couldn't find my unmute. Yeah, absolutely. And it's part of a comprehensive approach. We know that, you can't have, anytime you put anything on one person, it's just setting them up for failure. And so we do have a really robust small business department that has a really strong technical assistance program. And so this position is going to set up a program that's specifically procurement related. But if there's people that need help with their bookkeeping or moving to e-commerce or any of the other needs to help their business, we already have a really robust program with multiple business managers in place. And this is a complement to that. And the other piece is that with this position, there's also $250,000 in technical assistance funding. And so we foresee that being used in many different ways. And we do look to be informed by our Supplier Diversity Advisory Council. But part of that is, assistance with certification, assistance with insurance and bonding, building out an actual program that helps people get to be ready for procurement. So we don't see it as just one position. It's part of, a citywide approach. But we do want one person to be singly focused on that, because we see that as a current gap.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I think that will go a long way to help through this process, and asking the businesses themselves, what are the things that they need? How do they need their support? And I think through the advisory council, that should be helpful. Erin, do you have any comments or thoughts or immediate reflections anyway on some of the language in the home rule petition? I know that we'll have the separate working session to inform that, but just curious if you do at this point.
I can't at this time speak on any of the specific language in terms of legality around it. If that's a specific question you're asking, that would require more research.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I apologize for sort of where I am. I'm trying to, the kids are doing their school from home, and just trying to manage everyone on Zoom. Thanks.
No problem. Counselor, I don't know if Counselor Braden may have had to leave. If Counselor Braden is still on, if not, we're going to go to Counselor, I think that is also gone, Counselor Bach.
Sure, thanks. And a question I didn't get to ask the administration earlier, but I wondered how we were thinking about it. So I know that another tool sometimes for achieving more diverse procurement is thinking about, are there certifications that are helpful for us, like to have a supplier doing the job that we can sort of support people in producing, and then make those certifications a piece of the requirement in the bid. I'm thinking about the example of, we've been, again, talking about on the green infrastructure side, we've got folks working with some of our young people, and they end up with these green infrastructure certifications. And those are both, potentially helpful to our green infrastructure work, and could help us kind of tether that kind of pipeline to our bid process. And so I'm curious whether we've thought about areas where that might help us, where we sort of ID, these are skills that would be useful. And if we set up a skill and certification pipeline, whether it's for workers or for the contractors themselves, and then required that there's sort of a legitimate business like reason to do that, and it might help us. So I'm wondering if that's an avenue we've explored.
Yeah, we actually partnered with the Emerald Cities Coalition. I think it was just pre-COVID. That's the way my brain works now. Pre-COVID, I want to say 2019, on a Boston Contractor Academy that was specifically targeting and WBEs that work in energy efficient adjacent spaces. So anyone that's in HVAC, but they're not green certified yet. And so it was a pretty robust program that we partnered with them on. Just to flag, because I think this is an area of work for us, but maybe we can work on it jointly. Part of the challenge that we had at that time is that it wasn't easy to find within city contracts which contracts were had energy efficient components, because it's sort of packaged into we're rehabbing this building. It's not, we are doing a green, the way that the contracts were coded. And so I think that's an area I don't know if there's been improvements since then, maybe Chief Handy would know, but I think that it's just part of the way that Boston's doing business now. And so it's you can't really piece out this requires a green HVAC or a green insulation installer. And so I think as we're looking into goal setting and everything, it would be really great to understand which lines of work are green specific, and then continuing to partner with groups like the Emerald Cities Coalition, which also we had been partnering closely with environment on this. So it was cross-departmental and also with an outside entity. But I think that there is a lot of opportunity, because someone that's doing, HVAC might be making this, just throwing out numbers, but might be making, $25 an hour. But if they're doing green, they could be making $150 an hour, and so I think just getting existing companies that can increase their skill set and then connecting them to city opportunities, I think is a really, and it's an opportunity I look forward to exploring further.
Great. Yeah, no, I think that would be fantastic. And then I guess just the one thing I'd say, and I appreciate Erin's comments. And actually, it was funny, Erin, when you said there was jackhammering, I was like, I wonder if that's the same jackhammering I can hear. And then you confirmed. So I think it likely is. And one of my sad lessons as a counselor for 14 months is that I have so much less control over that than one might think. I guess the comment I would make is just that, state procurement law is a very deeply entrenched beast with a lot of interests, and the challenge of changing it, frankly, is a substantial one. And so I think that at the City of Boston level, I would hope that in our conversation, going forward to a working session, that we identify the aspects of state procurement law that most tie our hands vis-a-vis having diverse contractors. And frankly, that we can actually fairly efficiently change through a relatively direct legal, change in the law, right? And this was my point to the administration, that we have a pretty robust case for defending, right? Which is part of why I think we need those numbers on what's a premium that we're willing to pay for this diversity in the City of Boston, and sort of lay that out and not have it be a secret, and kind of just say, this is part of what we want to have be possible to happen. So I guess the pushback I would just have is I think absolutely all the stakeholders have to be involved in the conversation, right? And I think and definitely also with all these program designs, we've seen at the city level that when programs are not designed with the target user in the conversation, that's just a basic UI thing, it tends to fail, right? And I think, definitely that's something that it's on us to push the administration to do, and that I hear Selena and others saying that they're looking to do in this process. But I guess my pushback a little bit would be, I'm not sure a kitchen sink home rule on this has any prospect of success at the state level. And personally, I'm pretty interested in when we as the council have to send things up and then lobby for them at the state. I have an interest in making sure that we actually have a path to passing them. So I just want to sort of register that. I think that, and also when we have a home rule petition, we're asking them to make an exception for us, which again, I think it needs to be narrowly tailored and politically justified at our level. There may well be an argument for a state level work with the entire Massachusetts delegation update to 30B, right? I think that's beyond the scope of what this council can do. It's not obviously beyond the scope of what advocates can push for. But I do just want to say that, because I think that if we approach the HRP from a kitchen sink perspective, I'm not sure that it's going to get anywhere. So I just want to be straightforward about that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I will just note that the way this process, Councilor Mejia, but before you go, again, just reiterate to what Councilor Asabi George had asked about, a lot of that balancing of how you increase, but also how you make it efficient in language and possibly possible to pass will happen in the working session. So I think that, we're just kind of highlighting the good back and forth and robust conversation we will eventually have. So I don't think anyone disagrees. I think we're just trying to figure out what's that perfect sweet spot. So Councilor Mejia.
Thank you. This question is for Erin. Our office has always tried to lead with a community-centered approach, and I'm just curious if you can walk us through how you envision this community-centered approach.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's obviously a bit harder during the pandemic to meet with people and have that kind of face-to-face contact that I think is so important in these approaches. I can say that we had made a complaint with HUD in the Suffolk Downs construction project to have language access. And we think that was a really good example of taking a community-centered approach. We had investigators come and actually meet with stakeholders in the community. This was a different time, so they were able to go to their houses and actually meet directly with them. And so I think that sort of process, and then having, we already had, after we filed the complaint, we had some community roundtables where we, through Beckman, through Amplify, had different MBs and WBs come and share their stories there. And even just having that, like through a trusted stakeholder or directly contracting with MBE and WE leaders, I think is very important moving forward. And so we were able to do that over Zoom. It looks a little different. It's a little harder in this time, but I think that's generally what we're looking for here.
Thank you so much for that. That's great.
Any other questions, Councilor Mejia? Okay. So it's about almost 11 o'clock, and I feel there's a lot of data and information that the administration has given to us. Plus, I understand there's an embargoed announcement that's to happen that may also add to our conversation for the working session. Again, what I understand from this is from all points and angles, we're looking at a state level, city level, grassroots level to attack this very real problem that no one is denying, that we have an issue with making sure that our city dollars and contracts are equitably accessible to all city residents, and especially people of color and women. I don't think, and I heard anything denying that from the city of Boston. What I heard is several avenues of points of trying to attack this issue. And I appreciate that. And thank you for your hard work. So what we'll probably do is, unless anyone has any burning questions, I know Councilor Braden, we skipped you. I didn't know if you had any second round questions, but what we'll probably do is now with the new information we got from you today, I'm talking to the administration with the announcement that is to come from the administration, and then also with some thoughts, and I'm sure we'll have some language suggestions from the advocates. We'll schedule a robust working session to make sure this home rule petition is really hits that sweet spot, as I said. Councilor Braden, I don't know if you had any questions.
No, I'm sorry I had to jump off for a few minutes. I really appreciate all the work that we've done today. I look forward to the working session, and I look forward to really preparing a home rule petition that will actually has a chance of passing. So this is a really good start, and I look forward to continuing this work. Thank you.
Thank you all. Councilor Sabi George, unless you had any including, nope. So we're going to go ahead and end today's, I think, very good hearing. Thank you so much for everyone for showing up. Have a good day, and we'll see you at the working session. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Take care.
Thank you all.